Hello and welcome back to JLXP. First time in 108 episodes, I have Vedius, the LEC legend, to talk about the LEC with me. But in this one, I'm also going to talk about LTA, which I think I'm just going to call LCS since that's what it's going to be in the future, even though LTA is still LTA at Worlds.
We're back to the Mickey Mouse tournament at last.
Oh,
finally.
Man. The best tournament, the best time of year is Worlds, especially when EU gets to play NA. But how are you? How have you been? Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm all right, man. Busy as ever, doing a lot. Adding an extra international event definitely adds to the calendar in the year.
And
That's for sure.
The small bone to pick, and I need to be politically correct here, is first stand itself is cool. I think a third international event is cool. It was also a way to demo Fearless in a way that made people realize that it was cool, and then we got Fearless for the rest of the year. But the consequences that had on every region making a new format are just massive, man. I just feel like you kind of just took what was two splits and they were like, let's just chop them up differently. And then everyone, I think regions collectively lost their minds a little bit with the way the formats ended up.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, there's formats. So I browse Reddit often. And that's probably where I see most of the complaints about format happen. You've received a lot of complaints, a lot. And I think that there is valid criticism. I think some of it is overblown. Yeah. But I'm optimistic with the direction that the world is heading.
Me too.
I hope.
Me too.
Yeah. I do wish that we just had globalized formats in a way. I wish that every region in a way was the same. And I think that there would be pros and cons to that. But it would be way easier to compare, don't you think? Yeah. If we could all just have the same format. I completely agree.
I mean, I'll say one more thing on formats, and I did not expect to make this a format critique episode. I promise you we're going to talk about LEC and LCS.
Yeah, that's fine.
But
it's all good.
For the longest time before Fearless, we were playing best of ones. The West, I know that's a silly term to use now, but the West was playing best of ones. And then LCK, LPL were playing best of threes. And I think because of that, people didn't realize that they played twice as many games as us. But when it's best of three and the number on Leaguepedia is half as much, you're like, oh man, how do they play so many games? It's like, brother, they have played that many more games for 10 years. It's literally always been like this. But because the standings say 7-1 and their standings say 18-1, suddenly it matters. Whereas we were juicing the stats with best of ones and be like, yeah, they were 14-4. And meanwhile, Gen G's 18-0 in match score. And it just looks kind of the same and you don't realize it.
Yeah, but see, the problem that we have with this, because now I have bed bugs with this too, you see, because I'm going to start ranting. We've got to be careful now. Fortunately, this is relevant to EU and NA.
Yes.
This is the fortunate thing. So right now, there's obviously a lot of conversation about how the formats in the West are they're the main thing that's holding the region back, right? Sure. A lot of people, I've spoken to pros about this, where they're just if we could just play more stage games, we feel like we'd get better practice. And I want to represent their perspective is very much that, and I mean, I imagine you've been in this position yourself, right? Yeah. Having coached and worked with the team. They argue that no matter how many scrims you play, the way teams play on stage and how you play on stage is just different. So it's more valuable for us if we can play on stage as often as possible, because the more stage games we get, the more effective our improvement feels, right?
Yeah.
At least that's the most common argument that I've heard, right? Now, the way I interpret that is your practice is really bad.
Okay.
Because I remember Rogue was one of the best examples of this back in the day when Rogue sat at the top of the table. They were considered the best scrim partners by everyone in the league because what they did in scrims was exactly what they did on stage. And they were one of the few teams domestically that could translate whatever they'd practiced in scrims onto stage. And the fact that so many other teams that we have in our league can't do that, to me says there is a greater problem than just changing the format.
Yeah.
And I think that this feels very much do you remember, I mean, you were front and center at this with the NA thing with the ping, the champions queue, I feel like EU is now going through that.
The same cycle.
Where because we're kind of the 5th place region right now, right? Like that's kind of where we are. So people are just looking for reasons as to like this will fix it. You know, like franchising is a big reason that people are arguing the league sucks. Another reason is the format. If we just had a better format, if there was elimination, and I feel like that people see these single solutions as ways to fix the region, but I feel like they're just pieces of a greater pie. Correct. You know?
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
I don't think that there's a single solution to fix it. So that's my only gripe around the whole format conversation.
The funny thing,
I think
the funny thing now, I'm sorry I cut you off. I
no, you're good. You're good.
We have now guaranteed that the comments in YouTube and Reddit are all going to be about format. We're doing this whole podcast, like breaking down the teams and the regions.
Should we start again?
No,
should we cut?
No. I love this. I love this. I just want to expand on some stuff you said. There is a very real thing that I think hurt a lot of teams, and this is going to be true in LPL as well. Like, if you have too long of a calendar gap between stage games, I do feel like no matter how good your practice is, it's hard to actually measure improvement, because it's practice versus stage is always going to be, you need to practice that transition, right? Like you need to practice how you're able to move scrims to stage. So if you have like, to me, anything longer than like 3 or 4 weeks is too long. I've started the season scrimming 6 weeks before the season started, and I felt like generally speaking, the first 2 and 3 weeks are kind of wasted. And then if you start like 2 or 3 weeks before, like that's a real ramping period. And then one of the splits that I was coaching, we actually played 3 stage games a week, but they were all best of ones. And I hated that, because trying to fit scrim volume into that schedule was really hard, because you're literally like, match days are so consuming with how you need to like wake up and caffeinate and scouting report and prep. And like, you can't really scrim well on match days. And then you're taking 1 day off and then you only get 3 scrim days. So that's bad too. I do think like if you're going to try and idealize a format for like true performance and improvement for a team, you're playing relatively long regular seasons. I think your playoffs end up being a little bit shorter, even though that's less exciting from a viewer, and then the league's going to die anyway. And then I think 2 best of 3s a week would be like super ideal. But at the same time, like we did this in 2016 when Worlds was NA, and TSM and CLG fell flat on their face at Worlds. And C9 then got swept by Samsung in the quarterfinals after like squeaking a 70-minute win with Flash Wolf. So like it is, and to your point of like pieces of a puzzle, this happens like clockwork. Anytime a region falls down, it's either the GMs or the coaching or the work ethic or the ping, but like it's always a combination of factors. China has the most players. Korea has the best solo queue. I feel like those are the 2 overwhelming forces that make them stronger. And then everything that LEC or LCS does has to be exceptionally better than some other aspect of what they're doing in order to win. But that's we have this conversation every year.
To button this topic up, right? Because like, and the thing is, what I don't want to do is invalidate people's feelings or thoughts, because the truth is that these things probably do contribute in some way. To argue that the way that the formats have been carried out in the LEC all year, like, have had no impact on team performance internationally, I think would just be too much of a generalization, in the same way that I think just overhauling the format to copy what the LCK has, like, I also don't think that would solve it, right? So I'm not trying to invalidate these arguments. I'm just saying that I don't think there is a single solution that suddenly makes us internationally competitive. But one of the things that I have been thinking about a lot recently is how much the game has homogenized in the way that I think that the game no longer allows for clear regional identities anymore. And the reason why I think about this is, back when I started casting with you internationally, I feel like that, well, actually it was before that, 2015. I want to say this was the right year. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the year Origin went to Worlds, they were one of the early, like, everyone at that time had a different way of doing lane swaps, if I remember correctly. There was the Korean lane swap, the EU lane swap, and then there was also the China lane swap. Or they weren't lane swapping, I forget. But I remember everyone adopted to the EU way of lane swapping.
By the start of the tournament, they were getting a few wins, and then like by the end of it, they're just like, oh, actually, this is the way you do it. It morphs.
Exactly, right. And like, to me, that was an example of where, like, regions had very different approaches to how they played the game. And I remember, like, we've had loads of conversations about this before, where it was kind of Korea was always the macro geniuses, right? They understood the most about high level league. LPL was this aggressive, highly skilled kind of mess where their players were really talented, but the macro wasn't always the best. EU was known as like the innovators, right? We came up with stuff, we tried new things. Sometimes it worked, often it didn't. Blah, blah, blah. And then NA had kind of always we see the potential, never materializing it, always on the international stage, right? But it felt like that over
as
the
brand.
years,
Yeah, they just joke. It's fine.
I mean, we can get into the stats, because I know for a fact, you and I have spoken extensively about this when we went to international events together. EU versus NA has historically always been very close.
Yes.
Right? It's just always been the top team difference, right? But we can get to that later.
Yeah.
My greater point is that right now, at least in recent history, I think that because the game has become more straightforward, that we're just seeing greater gaps, because now it's not about what can a region come up with, what can they decide or define or whatever to help give them an edge that can maybe give them an advantage coming into a tournament. Now it feels like everyone's playing the same metas. You need to know the same champions. The amount of creativity is more limited. And obviously with Fearless, we've expanded upon that a little bit. But right now, what is like, you can test Dragon, you trade for Grubs,
for sure,
fight for Herald. Like, it just feels like I can't remember the last time we had a proper split pushing game, you know?
They
like,
don't exist.
When was the last time we saw, like, I remember it was Suning, World Finals, Fiora split pushing, Worlds 2020, right? Bin gets his pentakill, but he's bringing Fiora because that's how you could play the game back then. Objectives weren't so all encompassing that you could actually afford to be split pushing instead of actually playing the 5v5 every time. And I just don't feel like that depth of strategy exists in the same way that it did before, which I think, to me, this is the biggest contributor to what creates this gap between East and West right now.
And I also think Fearless, as nice as it is and as dynamic as it makes the game feel, does inhibit a team's ability to define an identity. Because even if they have a pocket pick, or this is the team that's really good at Annie Wukong, imagine 2021 FPX in a Fearless world. Like, are you really that worried about Doinby's Nautilus, right? Are like the 80 carry meta that they, or even G2, as great as they were at flex picks at that Worlds, I think Perks was like Isaiah Kaisa 2-trick for most of it. It's like, it just would completely change the way those tournaments play out. Not necessarily in a good or bad way, but I think it does inhibit. Sure, you can have this pocket pick and like, oh yeah, by the way, this team has a Casio player and this team has a Ziggs player, but that's 1/5 of the series. And it's not an identity you can rely on the whole time. Okay, fun tangent for 13 minutes.
Yeah.
It's been a while since
That's pretty much what this podcast is going to be, bro.
Yeah, I think because I didn't go to MSI as well, it's been like a year since I've talked to you. So we have a lot to catch up on. Okay, this one, unlike the other two episodes of the prep calls that I did with Ox and Cubby with LCK and LPL, we're going to prep call each other a little bit, with me doing North America, and I can do a little bit of Cade Stars because I did a decent amount of prep for them for LTA playoffs, and then you're going to give me LEC. I want to start with LEC. Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
I need to put a bow on our format conversation so I also don't get hate.
Sure.
Because I agree with you that the formats this split, this year, I think did inhibit our ability to perform at a high level because of the gaps that we had.
That's fair.
I think, at least in NA, split 1 was a total mess, in my opinion. It was this like 5-week split where we played this very quick elimination best of threes into like going to Brazil for 2 weeks, slaughtering the South teams real quick, and then like sending TL the first stand. Which, like, behind the scenes stories of that is Team Liquid had a facility in Brazil that was awesome. Right. So they could like practice throughout all days. Their like food was perfect. Their AC was great. And then like the facilities that everyone else had was like, we got to go home at 12. It's too hot. We can't go outside. Right. So like they couldn't practice to the same level for like 2 weeks. And even people on TL were like, maybe we wouldn't have won if we didn't have such a facility advantage. And like they're the ones that go to first stand. They have a bunch of issues later in the split with Umpty. But then like my biggest thing, and I think 100 Thieves deserves to go to Worlds with the way that they ramped up throughout the year. But I do feel like if this is my biggest gripe of the NA formats in particular, and this is not even going to be a shared popular opinion, but I feel like if you're going to play 3 splits, your third split either needs to be quite long before you eliminate teams, or you need to use championship points. Because, like, for me, like, Cloud9 was so good for so much of the year.
Brother, there's no Cloud9, bro.
Cloud9, brother. You watched their like DSG game and then like losing a shot.
I watched them let you guys down so often. That's what I watched.
You put this Cloud9 team in a 2021 format or a 2018 format when we have regional qualifiers. I think they go to Worlds like 8 times out of 10. I actually do feel that way. And then I do feel like the peak of that team is actually relatively high because Thanatos and Loki were such good solo laners. Blabber has a lot of experience, even though he had an off year. Sven Vulcan are good.
You sound... I wish,
I'm
like,
already coping. They're not even there.
You sound so much like I have sounded for EU teams before. It's so... But, like, I guess for... Like, I won't derail you too much, but, like... Watching them lose to SR, right, I was like, okay, this happens.
I couldn't believe
whatever. SR overperformed, but then also losing to 100 Thieves, I couldn't forgive them, bro.
Dude, they almost lost to DSG. They almost lost to DSG.
You're better off without them. They did almost lose. I didn't watch that series, but I saw the result. So I'm kind of like, I don't feel sympathy for them at all. They had enough opportunities, in my opinion, to qualify. So I agree. Didn't also FlyQuest just make fun of SR? Didn't they just 3-0 them without
FlyQuest made fun of everyone. Like they had
but this is the thing. You had your C9 FlyQuest rivalry. It was super close between the two, wasn't it?
It was, and then they never got to play each other in Split 3 because C9 kept losing. Because we did this like pick and play thing, and it's like, oh yeah,
I saw it. Yes,
if C9 had actually been the second best team in Split 3, they would have played like 4 times. Like they would have played at like the end of pick and play, and then biggest gripe with Split 3 format is how quickly on the calendar it eliminated teams. So like I agree with you, Cloud9 had plenty of chances, but they were all within like this 2 or 3 week split of the year where they were playing their worst League of Legends. Whereas if they had gotten credit for the previous bits, they at least would have had then like another couple week break before the regional qualifier and been able to make it in or something, right? That's the that's my tangent. So for me, I do think we're sending our 2 best teams from NA, which is as most that NA was going to be able to send this year. I do think 100 Thieves outperformed C9, but I do think C9 would have been the 3rd team. And then my question for you, really quick off the top, is do you think you're sending your 3 best teams? Because I was looking, KC won Split 1, MKOI won Split 2, G2 won Split 3, yet Fnatic is going to Worlds. So how does that feel? Yeah,
no, we definitely are. Okay. Fortunately, we got our best of 5 between KC and Fnatic in Madrid. So, and like the craziest thing about that was, so like, I have very little faith in Fnatic, and Fnatic fans are probably the only one that doubt them more than I do, because Fnatic just have this really horrible history last year of making a bunch of finals. I forget exactly how many they made, but then they just lost to G2.
It does feel like that's been the case for more than last year. There was a very
famous one, because last year our format was we had 3 splits and then a championship. And so the idea was that the splits, it kind of in the same way that Korea right now only has 1 title, that was supposed to be how LEC worked as well. So even though when you kind of see Yike with all these inflated titles, technically he has split titles and he has 2 championships, right? Because he won 2023 championship and he also won 2024 championship. In any case, in the summer, the split 3, Fnatic made it to the finals and they were up in every single game. And in game 3, they had an 8K gold lead, which they found a way to throw. And so it was so frustrating for so many Fnatic fans. And I think a lot of eyes were on this Razork humanoid duo specifically because they just felt like that it wasn't working. And then they doubled down again and they kept Razork and humanoid again for this year. And so then they finished 3rd at the beginning of the year. They also picked up Mickey, which a lot of people were excited about Mickey and upset. And on paper, this roster looks super good. For context, Summer Split upset 1 MVP of the regular season, right? So like the potential of the team very much existed, but then they finished 4th in playoffs. We had a situation where come playoffs, I want to say it ended up being similar to what we saw exactly in this playoffs, where KOI beat their opponent and G2 beat their opponent, and then KOI and G2 ended up meeting. And I think people didn't expect that. People expected KC to win, and that's largely where KOI ended up making their awesome run. And yeah, that's exactly how I remember it. KOI beat KC, and then they lost to G2, and then they rematched against KC and G2 again, and they beat both of them back to back.
Right, and you said summer, but you meant like split 2 spring.
Split 2 spring, yeah.
Winter, spring, summer, or split 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure what verbiage.
Yeah, we have winter, spring, and summer because they are actually 3 separate titles in EU. Yeah. They're 3 different championships.
Yeah, I see. Spring, they just got bopped by everyone in playoffs. So, whoops.
Yes, they did. And to answer your original question, the reason why is basically like there has been so much internal drama from KC. And this isn't something that like we've heard behind the scenes. It's been very public. The first one was bringing on Nisqy as a sub.
Yep.
So Nisqy was brought on, and so naturally
he
people
never
thought,
played, right? He just didn't play a single stage game.
No, but the craziest thing is that he was scrimming, apparently. Like, he was sharing scrim time with Vladdy, which naturally a lot of people are then like, well, hang on, let's kind of unpackage this. So you've got Nisqy scrimming with the team. If he's taking up scrim time from Vladdy, you must have a plan to use him, right? Because why else would you be using scrim time with him? So if you then don't scrim with him, fans become frustrated because they're like, well, why is Vladdy losing this scrim time if you have no plan or strategy to use Nisqy? And again, like, we ultimately don't, maybe they did intend to use Nisqy. Maybe it comes the day of, they just decided that it wasn't the best play. I don't know. Obviously, this is all speculation in that regard. But it was clear that Vladdy was really struggling because his performance in winter, we thought that, like, have we finally got a mid that usurps caps? That was the conversation for Vladdy in winter. His Victor was considered so good that even HLE was banning it against him.
Yeah.
That, like, his Victor was something that he had as a pocket pick. He always had good performances on it. And his laning was never considered, like, the strongest, but his team fighting, world class.
Yeah.
So many people were excited for Vladdy specifically. And then in summer, it just wasn't there. His performance was not the same. There was a moment where he got frustrated with fans. I don't want to like misrepresent the situation, but there was a stream moment that he had that kind of reflected the kind of position that he was in and the stress and struggles that he was experiencing. And it just felt like that KC was collapsing internally. And so in the series versus Fnatic, we thought a lot of people still voted for KC on paper. I remember saying on Euphoria podcast to Fnatic, who were our guests, I said, on paper, I think KC should be better than you. But in that live arena, I think that Oscar and Razork playing in front of a Spanish crowd will be better than KC will be.
Oscar actually played so well. He solo killed Kana like 100 times.
Completely made fun of Kana, yeah. And so, like, it's one of those hilarious moments in esports where I actually got the vibe check right, you know? Well, like, there was no analysis there. It was literally just, I think that when a Spanish player starts winning in front of his home crowd, he's going to win more. And when a team starts losing, who's already facing some internal struggles, it's only going to get worse. So in terms of performance, yes, we're sending Fnatic. Do I think there is a gap between Fnatic, KOI, and G2? Absolutely. Okay, Fnatic is not at the same level.
Let's just dive a little bit more into Fnatic.
KOI and G2, sorry.
Poby. There's no humanoid. They made this switch halfway through the year. And it was like highly criticized at the time, but it feels like it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, the criticism largely came from the fact that regardless, humanoid was still considered a top 3 mid in the league.
Yeah.
But it seems that there was just some, again, like, Odo Omne coined this phrase, and it's not really broadcast appropriate, but because we're on a podcast, it's pretty good. But like the EU civil wars are they're quite intense. What happens within teams, and like Fnatic is famous for it, especially when it comes to international events. They've had some very unfortunate things happen for them when it comes to Worlds. And I do hope that Upset gets a really nice opportunity, because I know that like it was a really awful and pretty horrible situation that he found himself in with the last time with Fnatic
in 21.
Yeah. So he did actually have another opportunity after that, but because in 22 he ended up going to Worlds as well. But In any case, yeah, Poby came in because they wanted to break up the humanoid Razork duo. Basically, they needed a change. They finished 4th in spring, and so considering that duo had been part of the roster for so long, they just felt like something needed to change. And Poby is one of the sweetest pros I've ever met. He is nothing but enthusiastic. His work ethic, like you can just see it if you ever speak to him. And I really love talking to him on the podcast just because he seems to be having a lot of fun. And one of the things he said that was like really heartfelt to me was like, I can't believe I'm now, like, just not that long ago, I was playing in Academy in LCK, and now I'm 1 series away from Worlds.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that I'm now, like, I've always dreamed of going to Worlds, and now I'm there. I just need to win 1 more series and I'm there. And so for him to have that opportunity is really cool. As a player, he's still like, I think there's a bit of contention around putting him in top 3 mids, just because even with Vladdy's performance, I think people weren't entirely sold that he was like outperforming Vladdy. Whenever I hear mid laners describe him, they say he's very like efficient. He is a very traditional Korean mid laner in that sense, that his mages are good. He's got the champions that specifically he's very good at. His pool has been brought up as a bit of a question, but he's a pretty vocal player. I think the biggest problem he's had with the team is his ability to coordinate with the team. Sometimes you'll see him sitting in a side lane. Sometimes he arrives to things late. And either that's because he has expectations around when he should or shouldn't be somewhere, or his team isn't properly communicating with him, hey, we're about to do this thing.
Yeah,
we need
sense.
you here now. That did get better in their series versus KC. They're a lot more on the same page, but obviously it helped. Like the biggest thing for them was Oscar had the series of his life, which he's been a big point of criticism for Fnatic. So yeah, like he's a great addition, and he loves the memes as well. He's just such a sweet player. It's really hard to hate Poby. It's you just kind of root for him because he's so earnest and he's a cool guy.
And this is something that I have mentioned, but I always like talking about it in longer form moments. Like LCK challenger mid laners.
Yeah.
I think even if they don't look great in Korea, they're almost always better than you'd think once they export. But I think there's a reason for this. Just look at the top mid laners in LCK, right? It's Faker, Chovy, like even the ones they're sending the Worlds, Faker, Chovy, BDD, and Zeka. And they're on the 4 best teams. And no one is ever going, no matter how much potential you have, you're at this point, you're never starting over BDD or Faker or Chovy. It doesn't matter if you're actually Faker Jr. You're not starting over those players. So like, they are on the 4 best teams in Korea. So the only way a Korean mid laner can go to Worlds is if they leave Korea. Generally speaking.
Interesting.
Like Zeka is the one that kind of ascended and managed to like sneak in
I don't know his
DRX.
history, but he'd been playing for a while.
But he'd been playing for a while.
It wasn't just.
But just like generally speaking, a lot of times, like even as you're a kid, you're going to look up to the most famous player and you're going to see Faker. So like not only are all the like everyone's going to want to play mid in Korea as well. So like the most talented players, generally speaking, are going to gravitate towards mid in the first place. But then they're not going to be able to get a team. So that's like, I look at NA and we're sending Quad and Quid. And then like, who else is good? Oh yeah, Loki's pretty good. Saint's pretty good. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, literally all these LCK CL mid laners. And it doesn't happen nearly the same extent in other roles, I think, but it's because it's a logjam in Korea. You're not allowed to play mid on a good team in Korea. Unless you're one of these 4.
Yeah. Or you maybe get a chance on a slightly weaker team. But even then...
And then you're probably...
I know Showmaker, he's not obviously like the same Showmaker that he was, but I think a lot of... Like the community sentiment, if Showmaker was ever replaced for a CL mid laner, would probably be...
It's almost more than it's worth. But like even 2 years ago, he'd be another one on that list of like, you're never not starting Showmaker.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that gives me more hope for Poby, because it's like, oh yeah, sure, he wasn't Faker, but like he's had a couple more years to develop, and like any LCK CL mid laner that goes to E or NA, I'm more hopeful about their skill level, just because.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a super valid argument I never thought of before. And what I hope is that we get to keep Poby. That's what I hope. I hope he wasn't just a one split thing for Fnatic. I hope that if Fnatic don't continue with him, that someone else in Europe does pick him up, simply because, like, as a foundation, he's got a great one. And for context, right, we'll talk a little bit more about Koi later, but when Jojo came in, he sat basically at number 5, pretty much. I think it was a pretty unanimous consensus that the top 4 mids in the league in winter was Caps, Humanoid, Vladdy, then Nuke. And then it was a conversation between, is Nuke or Jojo better? Which one of the two? And Nuke had obviously just come off the back of like a pretty good year with BDS, pretty much constantly fighting for top 3. And Nuke is still pretty solid. But then Jojo evolved from being in that middle of the pack to comfortably top 2. He's now on par, if not just a little bit behind Caps. So I'm excited about the ability for mid laners to grow in the region, and I hope that Poby gets more opportunities. But I mean, that's an extra conversation right now against Worlds. All everyone wants to see is Poby versus Faker. That's all we want. It's just, doesn't matter if he loses. People just want that matchup.
I mean,
the craziest thing to me,
Poby versus Rookie.
He never scrimmed them. I didn't know that wasn't a thing, but he didn't scrim them. That's not what happened, apparently. Like, I was asking him in the podcast, I was like, did the CL team ever scrim the T1? He just said no. We didn't.
They just
we
did
would not scrim them. Yeah, the T1 scrims would obviously, I guess, be like against the Gen.Gs, the HLEs, the KTs. Like, that's who they would scrim. And so their CL team didn't really get much scrim time, according to what Poby said. But yeah, I think it would be really awesome. I think he's going to learn a lot. But like Fnatic as a whole, low expectations. Low expectations.
Yeah. Okay. So they're clearly the 3rd best team that you're sending to Worlds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they are.
It's just much lower, I see. You never know. They can always surprise. I feel like they have a little bit of talent, and so much is going to be on
the problem is people have lost faith, man. That's the problem with EU as a region right now. Like, it's just, there are some of us that still believe, and I did a fun bit with Cage on his stream yesterday. Normally around international events, when he does his tier list, I always come in and I like fix his tier list. Yeah. And I come up with these like fun scenarios. But the reality is that I had a bit of a conversation with someone today about this, where FlyQuest, right?
Yeah.
You can sit there and you can look on paper, and it's a really interesting conversation because I've heard the argument made, FlyQuest don't do anything particularly special. And a part of it is because of the competition that they're playing against, right? As you mentioned, we didn't. I thought that we had seen FlyQuest versus C9 this split, but I must remember the spring split.
The split 2
matchup.
finals.
Yeah, that must be what sits in my head, because I remember that being super competitive and I remember that being really close.
Yep.
And so I sit there and think to myself, well, FlyQuest and C9, really good scrim partners. Whereas now it felt like in this playoffs, I just felt like FlyQuest is just making fun of everyone. You know, they were just clearly a step above. They weren't being challenged. Any of the mistakes that they could have been making weren't getting punished. And so how good are they really if they're not getting punished? But the reality is that NA has now gotten the better of EU's first seeds 2 years in a row, at least around Worlds.
Yeah. This seems like a good time. This seems like a good time to do EU versus NA, and then I'll talk about FlyQuest. I know we have less than an hour left. We're keeping this under 90 minutes. That's the promise we made to each other before this one.
True. That's
okay.
True.
So we're going to do NA versus EU, and then I want to talk to you about FlyQuest. Because we covered Fnatic. So the all-time EU versus NA Worlds record. We're going to start there. We're going way back.
Let's do it. Come on, you always have this stat.
52 NA wins, 61 EU wins.
It's closed a lot.
It has closed. Exactly.
That 3-0 at MSI did you a lot.
This is helping. However, the last 4 years, LCS versus LEC. 2022, I'm just going to do everything from the LCS perspective to make it easy. 5 wins, 9 losses in 22. And this is international events across the whole year. So this isn't just Worlds. These are just international events year by year. 2022, LCS 5-9. 2023, LCS 5-2.
Yeah.
2024, we only played 4 times, but LCS 3-1. And then this year so far, 5-1. Because of TLKC and FlyG2.
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
However,
the 2023, didn't you guys farm Mad? I remember NRG farming Mad.
Dude, everyone farmed Mad.
And then
it was great.
And then and then you beat G2 as well. So you got the win over Mad.
Yeah, C9 got a win over Mad too, I think, at Worlds.
I think so. Yeah. That's what I think. Yeah, and then they lost to Fnatic, didn't they, in the elimination?
And that's where you picked up your 2. Yeah. It was because Fnatic.
I see.
Fnatic 2-1 C9.
And then we lost the Weibo game, bro, and it was the Alistair game 3.
I still can't believe. I mean, I'm C9 biased. Like I can't believe C9 lost that Fnatic game in 2023.
Bro, this is C9, man. That's just what their legacy is becoming, dude. They're not the C9 of old.
They used to be clutch, and now they're the opposite of clutch. It just keeps getting worse.
They just let you down, man. They let you down.
No more C9 talk. They're cut off until next year. Okay, FlyQuest. They had an 80%.
Wait, no, we got to talk a little bit more about EU versus NA.
Oh, okay.
We have to talk about this.
Yes, sir.
Specifically because I have a bone to pick. All right.
Yeah.
So specifically because, right, and I will give NA the benefit of the doubt and say EU has not been better in this regard by any means, okay? EU fans can be just as obnoxious, and I will not try to defend them in any way, shape, or form, right? But I think both you and I agree, because I remember I don't know if we've cast, but we've been on broadcast together where EU NA tiebreakers were always a thing, right? And I remember, like, whenever one of us would do a desk, right? And the stat would always be, this is the EU versus NA head-to-head. And it was always very close. But then it was EU versus NA in tiebreakers, and then it was overwhelming EU victory.
It's like 6-0
that was the most consistent stat that you always brought to Worlds. So I remember it super well. And but the main point was that EU and NA, like the 2-3 seeds, have actually always been fairly competitive. It's just that like EU has on average had a better first seed than NA has traditionally. And in the time, like think 2019, when you had Liquid making it to finals in MSI, we at the time also had Fnatic doing very well, right? So like normally and now all that's happened is it's swapped. So now your first seed has just been better than ours for the last few years, with the small exception of when G2 made top 4 at MSI last year. That would be the only exception. Did you guys send TL to that one, right? Where you still beat
TL
Fnatic,
did pretty well.
What I remember.
Yeah, TL beat Fnatic and then had a competitive feeling series against T1. And then the thing that people hold on to last year is that TL then did like even better against T1 at EWC. So it like felt like they were right there.
Right.
But then then lost to FlyQuest in Swiss.
And then the only difference was G2 got their 3-0 against Top Esports, allowing them to get the top 4, right? But then Worlds came around, and this is the thing. So in my head, I'm like, okay, so the first seed for NA, I'll give you better than EU. I think that's not really, like, it's hard to argue against that based on results. But I don't think there's that much of a gap between the rest. And this is where I think we need to calm down. Only because, like, 100 Thieves lost to Rainbow 7 last year.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just feel like that's been collectively forgotten. I feel like that has just, NA has just somehow managed to avoid this coming up in conversation when Mad was ridiculed for, they still get ridiculed for losing in play-ins. And I'm like, guys, it happened to NA last year. How have we conveniently forgotten this?
It is pretty convenient.
Like 100 Thieves is coming back. Are we full of confidence this time around? Like,
No.
Anyway, that's my only bed bug. That's it.
I think that's a good point. I actually completely agree with you, and we're gonna try and keep this brief. But in the same way that it was pretty much like 2017-ish, all the way to like the end of 22. NA was actually unlucky to a certain extent.
Yes.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
There's, 70% self-inflicted wounds, 30% luck, puts them right at that break point where they don't make it into quarterfinals. And I think that's kind of what's happened to G2 in the last few years. Last Swiss draw was
100%.
Pretty hard, not the hardest Swiss draw. Year before that, they can blame themselves for not beating Energy, but the other teams they played were still good.
Crazy. What do we say? Last year was crazy for the Swiss draw. You guys drew yourselves, man.
Yeah. Which was the saddest, like the saddest way of advancing from Swiss. Like the FlyQuest TL rivalry last year was so incredible. They played like 30 games against each other. They were like neck and neck. They'd be playing in these massive arenas to close out. We had the minion backdoor with this like...
You did, yeah. I remember,
and then the most important match of their entire year is a depressed LEC studio because G2 had just been eliminated and everyone had gone home and there's like 14 people left.
10 p.m. It's 10 p.m. because it's the end of a triple best of 3 day.
And then like APA like locks in Kled and it's just like this. It's just the stupidest series. It's just
I fucking remember.
It was awful.
Because that was 3 games too, right? It went 1-1 and then the third game
they just locked in Kled. Yeah.
Now you got redeemed because you had the 5 games against Gen G, of course.
Thank God.
Right, and that's ultimately why. That's why I ultimately think that part in particular is not held on to because FlyQuest did prove themselves that they were worthy contender in the quarterfinals. I think that was the best possible thing.
Because there's past results where like let's even take 2019 TL who went to finals at MSI. They were in an incredibly hard group because like back then. There was only 3 LCK and 3 LPL teams. So basically getting the China-Korea groups, there were usually 2 of them, and those were the hard groups. Whereas there'd be the other groups where you'd have an LMS and a wild card, and it's like, oh, actually, by the way, that's the easy group. So it's like what kept happening in all those years is like the best NA team would get thrown in the killer group. And then like C9, as clutch as they were, would get thrown in the easy group, and then C9 makes quarters, and we get this narrative that they're the best team. But like, I really do feel like if we had Swiss this whole time, or if we had some other way of doing this, like literally the results, the history would be different. And I feel the same way about Europe recently, which is why I still feel like the regions are about the same.
I agree. I think the regions are about the same. I completely agree with you.
And have been for a very long time. So to me, anytime
my only caveat
happens,
to that is I do think that the 2019 G2 was a different beast.
Yes.
So just the West entirely.
Whenever Perks and
they're the only exception.
So actually, this is a fun tangent. Perks is really the magic. Like Caps is the steady greatest player of all time. But like Perks is the one that pushed the region into like, oh my God, these guys are crazy. Because the year that Caps first made World Finals, Perks eliminated Uzi with LeBlanc. And it's like, holy crap. And then Perks joins Caps. They continue to lead. But ever since Perks has left the region, they've looked a lot more average.
What often gets forgotten as well is the 2017 MSI where they beat WE.
And made finals.
From what I remember, they weren't favorites in that WE series either.
No.
And then that was also the finals where Perks solo kills Faker not once but twice in the series.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the it's a super interesting point. But you are right that like he was the guy that came into Europe and said that the game starts at level 1. You know,
he was the magic.
He was like, and he was the guy that would just do stuff and kind of break the mold and interesting perspective for sure.
Okay. FlyQuest. This is fun.
FlyQuest.
Oh, sorry. Last thing. The group/Swish advancements is at 8 NA, 14 for EU. Because there was literally a long stretch where you guys were getting like 1 to 2 to 3 teams into quarters like every single year. And NA basically...
I mean, 2019, we got all 3 teams out. It was crazy.
NA basically never gets more than 1 if they get them. So EU still has NA there, even if the overall window is
see, because the thing is, now my brain is just like, so let's talk about the 3 seeds, but we won't. Let's not go there.
We don't even have 3 seeds. I mean, so when Miru and Vivo Cade Stars make it in, you know, that's...
Bro, I was hyped for Cade Stars. Cade Stars? I heard you saying Cade. Is that how it is? Cade Stars?
Yes. It is. Okay. But you will hear it both ways.
Because I always thought it was Cade Stars. That's how
what happens a lot of times is like the Brazilian casters will say Cade Stars. But then when they talk to us, they'll like anglicize their pronunciations and they'll say Cade Stars.
Right.
So it's like, do you want to say it in the way they say it or the way that it's anglicized?
Right.
So we were a little inconsistent, but we agreed on everyone's agreed on Cade Stars. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's like Morteus. It's like I mean, you're gonna say that as best you can. They're 80 carry.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I mean we've been there, bro. The funniest one was Azael at MSI, where he was like, "How do you say the Koi top laner's name?" And I said, Merwin. And he's like, "Okay," because Draco says Merwin, and I'm like, "No, he doesn't." And he's like, "Brother, I'm telling you, he says Merwin." And then we got Dracos in a room, and he said, "How do you say the Koi's top lane, and he said Merwin, and I'm like, brother, what are you doing? It's Merwin. Like, and so it happens even in like, you know, player names.
Yeah. Goldberg last year when I came was like, okay, is it Alvaro or Alvaro? And he was like, Alvaro. God, yeah. And I'm like, no, it's Alvaro. Like, it's just, and he just, right before I go on air, he gives me the wrong pronunciation. I'm like, now my brain is mush. Like, I'm going to get this wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember Uzi versus Uzi I remember you guys at that World Championship. Was it 2014?
Yeah. Well, that's another version of the LPL casters say Uzi I. But then, like, when you ask them and they're anglicizing it, and Kobe went up to Uzi in 2014, was like, how do you say it? And he's like, Uzi. It was like Uzi, the gun? Yeah. And he's like, yes, like the gun.
Yeah, like the gun. Yeah.
Like, so Kobe's so convinced that he's right. But then everyone who watches LPL casters is like, oh, Uzi I. And you're like, well, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's just both. It's just both forever.
Oh my God. Anyway, tangent, FlyQuest. We're talking about FlyQuest.
Yeah.
FlyQuest.
I'm having fun, at least, but we only have 45 minutes. FlyQuest. Okay. 80% domestic win rate. Insane. Yep. That was, we had a stat during playoffs. That is the highest domestic win rate of any team in any region. Like higher than Gen G and LCK.
For the whole year.
Yeah, higher than Gen G and LCK, higher than CFO in Asia Pacific. Shoot, I should have that. What's the tri-code? LCP? Yeah, LCP.
LCP, yeah.
Yeah, in LCP.
LCP.
However, I do not represent the NA broadcast when I speak about FlyQuest because I'm actually quite concerned about them. So they are so good. Like, they identify their win conditions extremely well. They will play late game more than any other team in the league. Part of that is because they're good and they have good mechanics, but like there will be plenty of games where they'll give up first 2 dragons and grubs and Rift Herald and like wait until they have the right item power spikes and then never let you back in. The craziest stat we have is when they've had a gold lead at 14 minutes, they're 42-1 on the year.
Oh, wow.
So when they had a lead, like they literally didn't lose aside from one game in Split 1 playoffs against 100 Thieves when they got eliminated. Other than that series, when they lost to 100 Thieves, they essentially won every important game for the entire year. They won Split 2, they won Split 3, they won Player of the Year, they won almost everyone All-Pro. You know, they were the full first team All-Pro in Split 2. Everybody but Quad got it in Split 3 because Quid from 100 Thieves got it. So they've been incredibly dominant. But with that caveat, I really think the deterioration of Cloud9 made this team a little bored. And that's, I think they're going to be motivated now that they're scrimming Worlds teams and getting into it. But like, I do not think they improved in Split 3. I think Split 3 just ended up being too easy for them. And the games actually, because you've seen them win the game 80% of the time, they don't feel close, but like they are objectively close. They do lose early games. They are in scary situations. And then they've so consistently been able to pull themselves out of those scary situations. But that doesn't hold up in higher pressure situations, in my opinion.
Right.
And like, and this is a little bit of the vibes check. Like, Inspired specifically has just seemed a little angry for like 3 months. Like, just a little bit pissed off.
Okay.
Because like, silly examples, right? But like, there were times last year where he'd need to come on for pros or something. And he'd show up like 2 hours early and he'd be like, oh, I'm bored. Can I cast a game? Like, can I go on the desk? And he'd just be like, really just like wanting to do everything. And then now he comes in for pros, and albeit the times he's been called in, they've been his off days. So he's like a little upset that he has to come in anyway. But he just his energy level, like during the episodes, he's just like, he will respond when you talk to him. But he's not actively engaging other people because he just doesn't seem to care. Like he's been so much better than everyone. And he just he just wants the challenge and the dopamine of playing better competition. But I think that just hurts the team over the long haul. And then the second thing is like all this Bwipo stuff, man, it doesn't help. Like he gets embroiled in a ton of controversy on stream. He gets suspended by the team. Gatghost plays well, but they're not going to play Gatghost at Worlds. Like that guy's a future project, if anything. He played fine in the finals against Cade Stars. I'd say he even carried some of the games, But then like,
you sure?
Just having that amount of extra scrutiny, not really being able to go online to get your dopamine hits after games because you're just going to have to cut off from social media because people are going to be flaming you. The world's music video stuff. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve this stuff, but I'm saying that this is going to hurt him. It's going to hurt his performance at Worlds, and it's going to hurt the performance of the team by connection. So they're still the best team. But those are my caveats. Is the team has been so... I mean, if I'm more precise about it, like they just haven't been challenged, is the super simplified way of saying it, and that concerns me.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that. I mean, I've seen as well. We had our story meeting this week, and a lot of hype seems to exist around Busio.
Busio's been insane. No, Busio is he's the great hope.
Yeah, and the statement they used was best support in the West, which again, like, hard for me to really fight that right now given our current position. No, I mean, he was sick at MSI. His Bard was absolutely phenomenal. He completely made fun of G2, and it seems that he understands his role super well in terms of being that bridge for Inspired, which I think is a really important thing because, so admittedly, like, I haven't seen Inspired's trajectory in the same way that you guys have, but when he first joined the league, for us, we really struggled to convince people how good Inspired was. We had a lot of segments that were like really high level sort of breakdowns that showed you, here's all the really intelligent stuff that Inspired did in his game. And then people would go, cool, did he win? And we'd be like, no. And that was the problem, is that like he just wasn't winning when he joined, right? Like, and so because he wasn't converting it into wins, like people couldn't really get behind him, right? But we knew domestically that he had like insane potential. And I think one of the best examples of that was when he had that Misfit series and he got his pentakill on Viego, and he did this crazy thing and everyone was like, oh my God, Viego's so broken. But then people actually broke it down and they showed you all the really insane things that he did, where he like took Ashe and then the shield bow procced on the Ashe clone that he took. And then he swapped once the shield was gone. And like, he did all this really insane stuff and everyone knew how talented of a player he was. And like, I'm super glad to see that he gets kind of the recognition that even if he does play a bit of the bad boy, a bit of the villain, I think from my perspective, he seems to enjoy that role to a degree. He kind of thrives when people doubt him and don't believe in him.
And he just loves League of Legends so much. Like you can tell, if even if he's not there for conversation, as soon as you start talking about the game, he's just like, boop, like fully able to.
So I think that NA is in the privileged position that EU's been in before, where you just kind of have the results to back yourself up, right? But the terrifying thing about the Swiss stage is you don't really know who you're going to get. And the frustrating thing for EU fans, like I've had this conversation with Kadra a couple times where like there's a lot of debate between which G2 was better, 2023 or 2024. I think 2024 G2 was better. Some people will argue 2023 G2 is better. And I think, like, I've heard some very valid arguments for both, to be honest, because people argued that, like, well, you've got to remember Fnatic was winning most of the stuff until the actual finals where G2 then beat them, right? And so, like, G2 kind of limped their way through the year rather than dominated the year. And so when they came into the World Championship, they weren't at the same level of dominance they had in 2023. And I'm like, okay, that's a completely valid point. But I also think they were a more experienced roster with a lot more international experience. That MSI, they also finished top 4. So they proved that they could compete internationally. But yeah, it's FlyQuest have a fantastic opportunity now to keep riding that high. And I know exactly what you mean, because GX was our 5th place team contesting the top 4 that we'd had all split. And one of the things that Jackie said was whenever he plays against teams that are worse than him, they just play worse versus worse teams because they get bored in game. They actively get bored. They have to do something. They need that dopamine hit. And so they just make stupid mistakes and they throw and then they lose. And it's so funny talking to him about it because he's just like, like I got bored. So this whole boredom concept, I think, is a very real one. And I'm confident that Inspired will get the challenge that he's looking for when it comes to international. But I think that the consensus about putting FlyQuest as the strongest Western team right now, I think it's a valid one.
I think it's fair.
But I definitely think that it's a valid caveat to say, because we haven't really seen them tested properly, how good are they really?
Yeah. So with that, talk to me about G2, because the reason that people are like, oh yeah, by the way, FlyQuest is so much better than them is because of the 3-0 at MSI.
Yeah.
But I feel like Skumond was tilted out of his mind in some of those games. And then G2 has improved since then. Like as much as 3-0 is a dominant thing, it's like 2.5 hours of time where sometimes you're performing below your level. Do you think that was an element of, I haven't seen Skumond play this bad before? And then more so, like, how have they improved throughout the summer split to challenge the other top teams?
So I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent to just talk about the LEC as a whole briefly, and then I'll answer your question. Mainly because EU has felt frustrating because our finals have been disappointing throughout the year, even our summer split one. And the reason is because in winter, like, Kana had an insane Gnar. Vladdy got MVP of the series. He played super well. But another big conversation that was happening was Labrov and Skumond are choking. Mm-hmm. Labrov and Skumond, they're cracking under the pressure. They're both in their first ever LEC finals, and they're not delivering. They're not. And then summer rolls around. They've already beaten KOI. They beat them once before, and now it's the rematch. And so everyone is expecting, well, they're gonna beat them again. They've already proven they can do it. And again, lights turn on. We're in the finals. Elyoya plays super well. Jojo has a good series, and it's kind of the Elyoya Alvaro show, where the mid jungle is again just outperforming Skumond and Labrov. And so a lot of the caveats that are happening is, and like, some people are going to be like, oh, well, you know, you're just G2 biased. But I'll say the same thing again for the summer finals, where G2, like, Elyoya and Alvaro weren't there. Like, they didn't show up on the day. Like, two players that I think are the essence and core of this team were not performing at the level that I expect from this team, especially when you compare that to literally just the day before, when Elyoya is smurfing. He's having a crazy series against Fnatic. He's running rings around Razork. And so and then, like, obviously the debate will always be, oh, well, G2 did a good job of shutting them down in the same way that KOI did a good job of shutting Skumond and Labrov down. And like, you can always have those conversations and you can go in circles about that. Ultimately, it all comes down to perspective. For me, I felt like that our finals throughout the year have been kind of disappointing because I haven't felt what I felt like when I watched T1 versus Gen G. I don't know if you've watched that series, but the elimination match between T1 and Gen G, to me, that was two teams playing at their absolute best. Right? There were draft differences that was deciding the games. There were execution differences that was deciding the games. But it was not like, I was not looking at a player being like, wow, that player really let the team down. You know? Like the Maokai game 5 from Carrier, I sat there and I thought, okay, this isn't his best performance, but I feel like he's not on the best champion for Carrier in this game 5. So I don't like Maokai's support here. I didn't like that they drafted Lilia. I felt like that they drafted themselves into a corner and it became really difficult to play. And so that was always my thought. I wasn't looking at a single player and being like, this player is underperforming. It was always a conversation about who is outperforming their opponent. And I feel like I can't say the same thing about the EU finals that we've seen throughout the year. So to bring it back to the conversation of like Skumond and Labrov, those two didn't choke under the pressure this time. They absolutely outperformed Elyoya and Alvaro. They had a stellar finals, and it was kind of like a beautiful culmination for them of their year, which is why, I don't know if you saw it, but during the trophy lift, it was those two that lifted the trophy first. Like, it was very meaningful because that was both of their first titles, and also just the fact that, like, of the players that have experienced probably the greatest struggle throughout the year, it was those two. And so for them to have the culmination of all their hard work finally be lifting a trophy is really awesome for them. And also just for the league, as like a separate point, it's really exciting that we had 3 different champions throughout the year. That's never happened in the history of league. It's always been like a team dominating throughout the year. And I think that G2 kind of had a very strong performance in their finals. They had good demonstrations of macro. They had they had really clean drafts. I liked that their approach to a lot of it. But at the same time, I did feel like MAD didn't show me fully what they were capable of. I think JoJo had a really good series. I've been like, it's weird how proud I am of JoJo. Like I didn't really think that I would feel that kind of pride, but
he's still super young too. That guy, if he wants to play League,
it's kind of mind blowing. Yeah. But apparently, from what we heard from LZET, was that their plan when it came to KOI was they wanted caps. Obviously, everyone wants caps. And if they couldn't get caps, JoJo was their next pick. And this was last year. Mm-hmm. They wanted JoJo last year. And so the fact that they could get him, and then he's in the middle. He's not bad. He's not great in winter. But then he just blows up in spring. Massively improves. You can see it. The way he plays. A lot of people say his laning was always good. I think that his laning got better in spring. I felt like, and now in summer, I still think his laning is the best in EU. He is better at lane than Caps is. It's just some of the other things that, like, all-encompassing mid laner, Caps still kind of gets the edge on him. But yeah, JoJo played really well in that finals, but I was super sad to not see the Elyoya and Alvaro that I expect. Just because I know the ceiling of that team is so high. KOI has such synergy built within them. They have such faith in each other. Their practice and strategies feel so good, but they're super frustrating to watch because of how often they just make these really stupid mistakes that just cost them games.
So you feel like G2 and MKOI are like 1A and 1B? That's what I got from that a little bit.
If we're looking exclusively based on like summer playoffs performance, most would argue that G2 is a cut above KOI.
Of course, because they won, but
not exclusively because they won. It's mainly because G2 feels more consistent than KOI does. KOI has a very high ceiling, but like when we had KOI on the podcast, Jojo, I really appreciated his honesty. Because sometimes it's hard to say things to teams that you think when you think like, this is what I think is wrong with your team. But he kind of just said it to us himself, where he's like, basically, we just do these really stupid mistakes. And like, they're not consistent. They're not the same mistake. It'll be like one of us will just overstay on a side lane, or we'll try to ward a part of the map and we actually didn't have priority to ward that map, or we'll rush into a team fight, or we'll do these things. And he explained that part of it is because after playing against BLG and screening against a bunch of the LPL teams and the LCK teams, we realized that we were too slow in our decision-making. And so we needed to play faster. We need to be more confident in the decisions that we make, and we need to have, and we need to be able to act upon those things quickly if we want to compete against these teams. And so he said in summer, that's what we've been exclusively working on, being more confident in our decisions, being faster in our decision making, and making those decisions the right ones more often, right?
Yeah.
And the result of that is that you get really stupid mistakes sometimes, like really stupid ones. Because when you try to play faster, naturally, sometimes you're going to miss things, you're going to make silly mistakes. And that has affected their consistency. The good news is that they are playing faster. I think that that's been a general consensus. And when teams play against them, sometimes they feel what they have described as when they play against international teams, like they feel suffocated, you know, like you don't actually have a play. And they've done that to teams in our league as well, where they're putting so much pressure on the map that you don't feel like that you have many options. So in that regard, they've definitely gotten better, but they're just not as consistent in the same way that G2 has. G2 isn't as dominating, I would say, in that sense, but they play very similarly to how FlyQuest approach the game, because Skumon and Inspired, they are very similar junglers.
Interesting.
Skumon is just a younger version of him, and that's why I think, like, I remember I cast it, Inspired ran rings around Skumon. Right. It was really kind of like a dad teaches his son sort of deal, you know? And so that's where I think Skumon, that's going to be the big question. How much has Skumon really leveled up? Because domestically, he beat out Elyoya. He got his revenge on Elyoya. He managed to make it to the top. He lifted his first title. But now coming onto the international stage, has he closed that gap against Inspired? Because Inspired is just one jungler compared to the many other, like Ona, Kanavi, Tarzan, just to name a few, he's going to be going up against. Like, it's not going to be easy for him by any means. And the thing is, I don't have the same confidence in Labrov that you guys have in Busio. Right. Like, I don't know if Labrov has fully proven himself to be that guy that can necessarily bridge the gap or work with Skumon in the same way that Busio I'm not going to say covers for the weaknesses of Inspired, but more so like complements his play style.
He complements him so much. There is a really interesting thing, and I know we're jumping all over the place. So there's a few more things that I want to touch on. We have 20 minutes left. We're looping G2 and MKOI together. I have a follow-up question, but I want to touch on your Busio thing really quick. We got some comms listen-ins when they were playing without Bwipo during the game, and it was literally Inspired like 75% of the voice comms, Busio like 20%, and then the other 3 were close to silent. So like even when Bwipo's there, it's like that's a 3-voice team, and then Quad and Masu are just like executing from the carry standpoint. So it's a really interesting dynamic in terms of how that team operates. You made me want to ask a couple follow-up questions about G2 and MKOI.
Sure.
Do you think that if G2 keeps their roster the same, are they better or worse than G2 right now?
Oh, God damn it. Well, this has been the debate, right? This has been the whole debate.
There's a level, I think a lot of people that don't play competitively don't necessarily understand how sometimes you just need change. And this is going to be another one of my concerns about FlyQuest. It's kind of all encompassing. You need role players in sports, but I'll start with basketball. Even the top teams switch out their role players every couple years, because you'll have your star player that gets to dominate the ball and make all the decisions, and then you'll have your role player whose job is like try really hard on defense, like be really good at defense, all your energy. Step 2, stand in the corner and wait for the ball, and if it gets there, you get to shoot. But you know, I'm like one of the best basketball players in the world. Can I dribble? No, you're not allowed to dribble. Can I like create my own shot? No. You have to wait for the other guy to create your shot. Like, what can I do? You have to do exactly what we tell you. And I feel like there's probably a level of that on a Caps team. Like, because he's so good, you need to play around Caps. I think it applies more to Inspired, actually, because he's so dominating in voice comms and as a personality that, like, you must do what Inspired says for 2 straight years. And I think that can hurt the team environment over time. So like this to me is the last run of this FlyQuest. And I think that's going to be, I think that was true of G2 last year, is they had exactly the same roster for 2 years. And that was probably the last run of that team. Now, if they'd made a really deep run, I think you make an argument for keeping the team together, because winning cures all of these issues no matter what. But I think even if the team is a little worse than the team was last year, I think the team would have been, I think 2025 G2 with the same 5 players would have been worse than 2024 G2 with the same 5 players. But I want to get your take.
Interesting. I mean, it's a really difficult question, because I liked that version of G2. I think it came so close so many times. Just goddamn BLG ruining everything. But I very much agree with you that like sometimes change just has to happen. And I think for the betterment of the league, like, because that's how I think about it, because I care about the league's success rather than a team's success. So like maybe this doesn't properly answer the question, but Mickey and Yike departing made the league better. You know, Yike wins his first title without G2. Like he continues, people make fun of him, right? Because he's like, oh, his titles are inflated because of our format. So he's got like 8 titles across 2 years because of how our format is. And then he goes and wins his 9th without G2, right? And so then he gets to give a big middle finger to everyone, and is just kind of like, well, like I wasn't just doing it for show. It wasn't just because I played with Caps. I can make teams good as well. And then for Mickey, like in spring, him and Upset, just the best bot lane in the league. They were just the best. Yeah. The funniest thing was the only bot lane that killed them was Kazi and Niski when Niski came in for a split as support. That was the only bot lane that killed them, which is, you know, it was just the funniest thing. But yeah, like they're incredibly talented as a duo. But I agree with you that sometimes change needed to happen. I think a lot of people are just super skeptical about Lebrov specifically. I think that Skewmond, people were excited because, hey, like he's just exactly what Yike was. He was a hot prospect from the ERLs. He'd just come off the back of winning EMEA Masters. Skewmond, I believe, was on BDS Academy. Paris was the support originally that G2 was interested in, but basically BDS blocked that, and instead they took the gamble on Paris themselves and offered Labrov instead. Now again, like, don't take my word as fact in that. That's how I understood how that played out. And so a lot of people were just like, why wouldn't you take a risk on like another support? You know, like Labrov's been good. Sure, he's been fighting top 3 for a really long time. He's definitely a good player. He's consistently above 1,000 LP in Challenger.
Yeah.
This guy's like very, very good. But is he really the best? And I don't think that people had that faith, but he's grown a huge amount. He's so much better. He really is. And I think he's just overshadowed by the sheer amount of growth that Skewmond has made.
Yeah.
And to go back to your point earlier, when I think of Gen G, I don't think that they have role players. Is kind of the weird thing for me. Like, I think that Keen is the most complete top laner in the world. I think that Canyon, I mean, maybe not right now is he the best jungler in the world by any means, but has been. And then you've got Chovy and Ruler, who are just Chovy and Ruler.
Yeah.
And then Duro, obviously, like, people didn't expect much of him, but he's become an incredible support. And then that's the question of, is he good because he's on a good team, or is he just that good, right? And I guess in my head, I feel like League doesn't actually allow for you to have role players in a sense, because each role is so important within its own sphere that I don't understand basketball, but like football, I understand a little bit more.
Yeah.
But like Messi, right? Like you don't get to have a Messi in League in the same way that you do in football, because each role is so important.
There's one ball versus 3 lanes. Like, you actually get to split the farm.
And so if Broken Blade doesn't perform at the level of a world-class top laner, he could be the single pillar that brings the whole castle down, right?
I think one of the reasons
kind of how I see it.
Gen G doesn't have a role player, I think within a game they do, but one of the reasons they're so exceptional is it can switch. Like, Chovy's most played Chovy's most played mid laner is Galio.
100%,
right?
exactly.
And
yes.
that's what he plays when he needs to impact the map as much as possible.
100%.
And then, like, when he's playing Orianna, okay, now Keen is going to be playing weak side. Or if Ruler is playing Ezreal versus Ruler playing Kai'Sa, it's going to change a little bit, because there are still resources you trade. But I definitely hear you. It can't be as extreme as in football and basketball. But I think Gen G gets away with it because they can kind of all play everything, which is like impossible for other teams.
But this is also why, like, when you look at Fnatic, the reason why I have so little faith in them is because they have to funnel into that one star. It feels like their only option is to play through bots.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? And so that's like, I look at KOI and I think to myself, okay, this is a team that drives through their jungle support. And Super has grown a lot this year. Credit to him. He's become a really talented AD carry, top 3 in the league pretty consistently throughout the year. And then with Jojo, you just think that, like, as long as they're playing through one of these 2 players, they have a clear win condition. Normally, they don't ever play through Mirwin, kind of like they used to with his kind of crazy picks, his Varus top. He used to have a fun story about him. He had a presentation where he explained to his team how Fiddlestick's top works. And he had to show them and explain to them how you're supposed to play with Fiddlestick's top. That's the kind of creativity. He also brought out, into Ambessa, he brought out Vex as a counter pick, which worked fantastically, by the way. Yeah, but he only ever did that once.
He did a whole presentation for it, and he only got to do it once.
I don't know if he did the presentation for that one, but yeah, I just remember that Melzet kind of explained that if you're going to try and bring crazy picks, you have to explain to the team how they're supposed to play with it, and if you can do that, then we'll allow you to play it. Which is ironic, because Jojo just played Cassidy in the finals, and they hadn't scrimmed with that in spring at all. He just brought it out.
Yeah.
In any case, and that's where I think that, like, G2 just feels like the more complete team right now, based on recent results. But, like, the truth is that EU, there is a consistency problem. It kind of frustrates me that I feel like that my argument for EU teams is always, if they show up on the day, they can be good.
Sure.
Which I hate that I have to use that argument, because I don't believe that T1 has to show up on the day. I just believe T1 will show up on the day.
Sure. Gen G needs to show up on the day, because they haven't. Because if they showed up on the day, they'd have like 3 world championships by now.
I mean, it's short, but like, isn't that kind of what KT did, right? KT just kind of showed up on the day. They had that insane, and then like reality struck, and then 3-0, 3-0.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And I'm kind of like, that's what I wish.
I see.
That's kind of how I believe in EU teams, where it's kind of like if they show up on the day, they 100% can contest. I don't believe as much in Fnatic, but Koi and G2, I absolutely believe they have the skill. And people might doubt me, but like I genuinely believe that if they play to the upper end of what they are capable of, they can 100% contest the top teams in the world, 100%. Okay. But the problem is that that's not a standard for them. It is if they show up on the right day, if the conditions are right, if their drafts are good, like that type of thing, and that's what frustrates me. And so now it's a question of they need to prove themselves. They need to prove to us that they can perform internationally, because EU's been starving for a while now. We really need a win.
Ever since Perks left. I want to tell you about 100 Thieves, and then
go ahead.
Then we're going to rank the Western teams 1 through 6. With our collective
experience. You're not going to talk to me about Cade? I need to know about Cade too, bro.
I'll give them both. Well, you have the heart out, man. We got 12 minutes left. We're going to be done.
You can summarize. I summarized both G2 and Koi together. You do the same.
I'm going to check those timestamps. That took 25 minutes. So I have to be twice as fast as you.
That's fair. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, okay, valid.
100 Thieves had a journey this year. They were the surprise stars in Split 1, making it to finals, beating FlyQuest. But then you can't even really call it a slump because it lasted so long. Like we had really weird formats. So like they did okay at the start of Split 2, then like really the bottom fell out at the end of Split 2. And then they started Split 3, 1 in 6.
Split 1 though?
They were good in Split 1. They like good enough. Right. Split 1, think of it as lock-in tournament. That's how many games we played.
Right.
So it was a lock-in tournament spread across 5 weeks that also had Brazilian teams. So really weird, but the total number of games, like there really wasn't that much gameplay. So they were good in Split 1, but a lot of that can be a little bit of luck. And their vibes were just terrible at the end of Split 2 and the beginning of Split 3. And then the big turnaround happened when they brought in Dokla to play and subbed out Sniper.
Because he was a coach, right? Originally
coach? After Split 2, they said, we need help for macro, so we need to get a positional coach for Sniper. And they settled on Dokla, and then 3 weeks later, Dokla was playing. So I made fun of him that he went to the solo school of coaching, because that's what Solo used to do in LCS, is he'd like join as a coach and then like find his way onto the team. He claims that wasn't his intent, but I can still flame him for it. But essentially, like what happened here, I think, is Dokla is a vet and has a good experience on how to do lane assignments throughout the mid game. And Sniper, as a rookie, does not have that. And I think the X factor there is that Quid doesn't have it either. So he's like the best player in the league when he's on, but I feel like when you combine him and Sniper, they hurt each other in that way during lane assignments. But since Dokla knows the right lane to go to, Quid just goes to the other lane and it's solved, rather than Quid having to decide where he deploys on the map every time. And then Quid's laning and mechanics and team fighting is just like out of this world. But they went from literally 1 in 6 in Split 3 all the way to finals. So they played like 8 best of 5s across a 1 month period. So they got an insane amount of volume to improve. So I don't think you can judge them off their 1 in 6. But then the problem is when the lights were brightest, they lost to Kate Stars. And Quid definitely shrunk in that final, which is really similar to what happened to them in play-ins last year. So I do think there's an element of choking that we have to worry about with Quid. For his, like, he's literally, some of the things this guy does are so insane. They love to play like basically full-on dive comps. So Quid and River are exceptionally good at killing enemy carries, and they're really creative in how they approach team fights. So like that's kind of what you have to watch out for in this team, is like if Quid and River are having good games, they're super dangerous, but River takes a ton of risk and Quid is inconsistent. So they can look awful or they can look amazing. And also because they're so dynamic in team fights, the gold leads mean less for this team on either side than they do for other teams. because they'll win team fights from 3,000 gold down. They'll lose team fights from 5,000 gold up.
Right.
FBI also very streaky player, if you can believe it. He feels like he's supposed to be a reliable guy, but he is actually incredibly up and down throughout his career. So this is a massive wild card team, is my read on 100 Thieves. I'll do Cade Stars real quick. They, Trimby from Europe. He is the kind of certified leader of that team. Miru is their best player. They get a lot of get a lot of their advantages because Miru will cheat, in my opinion. Like, he will just, the jungler will be there and he will just play aggressively 1v2 and he'll find a way out of the situation. And like, that's how they'll generate tempo. Unfortunately, the CB LOL is such a hand check region that they never really had to test. You're not winning games through macro because teams will literally just fight each other. Like, there was a moment in the South playoffs between Red and Cade where they just like had a 5v5 standoff over a blue buff, and nobody left. Like, the waves are all just hitting each other, and they just stare at each other for 20 seconds and eventually fight.
Right.
And it's like, and one team wins the fight 4-1, and now they have an advantage and they're able to win the game. But like, that fight never happens basically anywhere else in the world anymore. So they're going to have to, but
they beat 100 Thieves.
They did.
And do you think that was 100 Thieves underperforming, or do you think that was?
Yeah, I mean, the bias in me is going to say it's a little bit of both. I do think Quid had an off series. I think their drafts, 100 Thieves drafts, were bad in some of their games, which is a hard thing to analyze because, a bad draft one day, fast forward a month and you see it piloted differently, becomes a good draft. But I do feel I do feel like their drafts were pretty bad. So I would still say I have slightly higher expectations. I mean, I actually have much higher expectations for 100 Thieves than I do for Cade Stars.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think they're probably a better team over the long tail of it, even though they did lose that game.
But would Cloud9 beat Cade Stars? Is my question.
Oh, Cloud9 will beat 100 Thieves, brother. Like, they
already lost 100 Thieves. What are you talking about?
Give them another chance. Throw them into the World Swiss stage, and they got that. They're the second best team in my eyes. Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Okay, so
fair.
We need to wrap up.
Did you want that?
We need to wrap up.
Yeah. Did you want Heroes and Stars before we wrapped up?
I don't think we have time, man. But let's do it real quick because people understand what Hero Star is at this point, so we don't need to go into detail too much. Give me Hero Star without that much elaboration of your three representatives.
Yeah. So for Fnatic, Star is probably upset, best player on the team. Hero, probably going to be Poby. A lot of people just excited to see him play internationally.
Yep.
So he just got a really cool story behind him. Then Koi, best player, in my opinion, is probably Jojo. I think that he's just shown to be more consistent and just very quick. I think he's proven himself more internationally than Elyoya has. Kind of a hot take. Elyoya's been to Worlds a bunch of times, but when Jojo went at MSI, it wasn't Jojo that was underperforming. I think it was Elyoya. But from a hero perspective, it's either going to be Super or Elyoya. I think Super from the international community gets a lot of flack, but he is a really good AD carry. And I think he can prove himself. But Elyoya, I think he needs to just shake off the demons. Too many times internationally, those names. He's even said it himself at MSI. He saw the nameplates and he got in his own head a little bit. So I hope he can shake those demons off. And then for G2, maybe a bit of a hot take, but I think Hans Summer is the star. I think he's been the best performing player all year. If you want to just look at exclusively the finals, a lot of people will sit there and say Skumond for sure. But Hans, it's not a good analogy, but I always use baseball for some reason. But Hans Summer's the guy that hits the home run. He's the guy you set him up and he will deliver for you. That's what he does, and he's been very good at it this year. So I think that
he's an RBI guy.
Surprise. Yeah, I don't know what that means, but sure. But yeah, I think from a hero perspective, it's probably going to be Skumon and Labrov, just their story coming into international, getting another chance.
Yeah.
At EWC, I didn't watch the tournament, but I did hear that they beat BLG, which I think was a big moment for them, and to do it on a Riot international to beat an Eastern team, I think will be a lot for them, and those will be the players to watch.
Not Caps, the GOAT.
Not Caps.
Okay.
Not the GOAT.
I'll do Hero Star. For VKS, I think the star is Miru. I don't know. I can't say completely definitively who the hero is going to be because they have a lot of rookie talent on that team. Orteas is a really talented AD carry. But I do feel like Trimby's probably going to end up being the hero just because he's recognizable to the Western audience and is the target of most interviews. Plus, he's kind of the leader of that team and went over there to find some success. 100 Thieves, Quid is their best player for sure. He's their star. Okay. And then I think even though we don't know 100%, we're like 90% sure this is Rivers' last year. So his story and what he's able to do at the World Championship is going to be really important because of Korean military service. That's it for them. Dokler's a cool story because he joined the team and they instantly shot up. But like,
absolutely, he was the one that kind of stuck in my head.
Yeah, he's great. Like he's all over social media as well. Like he is going to be the most
hilarious,
visible. You should definitely check that guy out on Twitter. And so I can give him honorary hero as well.
100%. Yeah.
And then for FlyQuest, I mean, it's Inspired and Busio, some combination of the two. We said that if we had a split 3 MVP, which we didn't, Busio would have won split 3 MVP, but Inspired won Player of the Year because that was what our award was. So that's how good Busio was in split 3, which then makes him the star and Inspired the hero.
Right. Yeah. So we didn't have a summer MVP given the nature of the format. Basically, the decision was made to move away because 2 groups meant that the teams didn't actually all compete against each other. Yeah. So we decided that it probably would just be a very controversial topic. But the finals MVP was Skumond.
Okay.
So that's
all right.
Worth
I know you have to go, but we're going to power rank before we end. Just for the
no problem. If we're a couple minutes late, it's not the end of the world.
FlyQuest 1.
Yeah.
G2 2.
Yep.
I feel like MKOI is probably 3.
Yep.
This is where I want to sneak 100 Thieves in.
I knew it. Okay, continue with your list.
Yeah, and then I think it would be Fnatic and Cade.
You really don't believe in Cade?
No, I don't.
Interesting.
Did you see Raz's tweet last night?
No.
He got He got angry, man. He got angry. I need to pull this up. So there was this.
Was that the thing that's on Reddit?
Yeah. Because Seal.
Page of Reddit right now?
Here's the thing. Seal, the head coach of Cade, gave what I think was actually a fairly balanced interview, talking about.
Yeah, I think so as well.
If you read the whole interview, but then the headline was like just shitting on NA.
Right.
So then Raz was like, brother, like, and he just went in about like we do and do not deserve third seeds. He listed out like all that the NA third seeds have done throughout history, which was a lot, like C9 in 2015, 16, 17, 18, like as the third seed, always made it through groups. And then like even 2020 TL as the third seed did pretty well. Like they went 3-3. But then he was like, oh God, I need to find it. What about the CB LOL since play-ins existed? And he just lists out 2017 through 2024 failed to qualify from play-ins and then bracket how. For like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years in a row. So he was like,
oh, damn, he
just went in. And then he also, the overall North-South game score this year was 23-8, which is fairly one-sided, even if Cade Stars did better than expected. But even with that, still, we're unable to win.
Here's the difference, and here's the key difference, which, given that we're at the end, I think is valid.
Okay.
EU is winning everything right now. Okay, EU is winning an LEC. An EU player won LPL, an EU player has won LTA, and an EU player has won both North and South. And all I'm saying is I think that that's the difference maker. I think that EU is slowly taking over the world. I think our region may suck, but we've got seeds everywhere.
They're the next Korean mid laners, like it's just European players in general.
For you to disrespect Trimby, no, I refuse to have it. They will not be the bottom seed. I refuse.
So hold on, I'm putting
100 Thieves 6th, baby.
And then the 4 European teams in your mind suddenly.
I'm tempted. No, they're Brazilian. They're Brazilian with a bit of EU blood in them. Okay. I would never take that away from Brazil, but I'm glad that EU can support our Brazilian brothers and sisters. Okay. I'm glad.
Yeah.
But I have no faith in 100 Thieves, dude. I don't. I just don't. I do not believe in them whatsoever. Like the R7 series in my mind lives rent free. Yeah. And like maybe it's not fair to judge them on that. And to be fair, Big Dokes, he's the guy that knocks G2 at, like, you know what I mean? He was Big there.
Big Dokes.
So Like at international competition, he's surprised many. Like it definitely muddies the water when we get 4 through 6, and I think it's completely valid to put them in any order. I'm not even going to try and defend Fnatic. Like they have to prove so much to me to show that they're going to achieve much in this tournament. But KOI, G2, FlyQuest, I think that's a comfortable 3-2-1. In my opinion, going into the tournament, 3-2-1 is for sure that I'm safe and feel comfortable.
You didn't just sneak FlyQuest below someone, right? Like you have them as the number 1.
No. KOI, G2, FlyQuest,
3-2-1. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, Vedius, this was really fun. Yeah,
I had a lot of fun too.
I feel like
I'm sad you're not going to be at the tournament with me because we've had a lot of fun desks together. And we've made had some good ribbing, but hope to see you back there next year.
Absolutely, that's the plan.
And hopefully we can have some.
That's the plan.
Some good banter.
Yeah. Okay. Safe travels. Have fun at Worlds, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Man. Yeah. Take care. Bye bye.
See you.